James Barnes Business. I want to get right to it. Let's talk about block walking. You know, candidates, it is one of the foundational things you're told to do. Get out and knock on a door, talk to the voters and so forth and so on. But is it that easy? Have you been doing it? What is it all about? And I'm going to get into that a little bit. And I'm just going to make this super duper easy. I'm not going to try to get too very specific. But what I am going to do is walk you through some of the thoughts that you need to think about. I'm going to talk about the costs involved. I'm going to talk about like when you squeeze a lemon, how much do you get out of it? All those different types of things, you know what I mean? Or if you squeeze the grapefruit, whatever fruit you want to squeeze, what do we get out of it? And so that's what we're talking about today. We're block walking, we're understanding it, and we're going to have fun doing this. So super duper easy. I got to put my spectacles on. So let's start right here. You know, who is the door knocker? When you're block walking, door knocking, who's doing it? You have the candidate, you have volunteers, and you have paid people. So, candidate, you've got to get out and do some block walking. But once again, this is not a candidate-centric conversation as it is to what is block walking? What do you expect to get out of it? And some general thoughts to get you on the right track. So for instance, you know, candidate, yes, you're going to get out and block walk. You know, you're gonna need a team of volunteers to go out and block walk. The pros and cons of volunteers are super easy. It takes a lot of work to coordinate volunteers. It takes a lot of work to coordinate people, to get their attention, to get them to show up and do things that are hard. Nobody likes to go knock on a door. And then on top of that, this is one of the cons. Everybody else is trying to get those same volunteers. If you go to meetings, you know, everybody needs volunteers, and you're not just the only candidate in your space. There's other candidates, you know, congressional candidates, House candidates, Senate candidates, dog catcher, whatever. I just joke about dog catcher. We hire those people here in Texas, at least here in San Antonio. But so I'm sure we have somebody appointed that. But anyway, neither here nor there. So you have volunteers, and the pros of volunteers is you could really, they believe in you and they believe in what you're doing. And I think as a candidate, you know, as hard as it is to get people out, you need to have a consistent tempo in block walking. It needs to be something consistent. But, you know, once again, there's different strategies. You know, I've been in part of campaigns that we couldn't do the consistent tempo because we did not have the resources to do so. It was 13 counties. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then, of course, then you could hire the professional block walker, and you get someone. You could also actually pay for block walking, you know, $15 per hour, and you convert a volunteer into a paid person, or $20 per hour, whatever it takes. But I'm telling you, it's going to be really hard to get a consistent product out of that. So this is all just kind of understanding what you're going to get. And you know, if you're not looking for consistency, so you don't want to be angry with people all the time because they're not showing up. That shouldn't be your campaign. And so don't put yourself in that predicament. Don't expect what you know, it's just people are tough to work with, you know what I mean? And then of course your professionals, they cost a lot of money. So in order to hire professionals, you're going to have to pay a lot of money. I don't know anybody running around with that kind of cash, you know. Just think about it. One block walker at $20 an hour going 4 hours, that's $80, you know. And so that $80, what did you get out of it, you know? And that's a question you've got to understand. What kind of person doing 1 hour? And so we're talking about that. So those are the, you know, of course, then the professionals, man, they could sweep through everything really fast. I used to work in a company in Austin where we actually ran it and launched it, and it's a longer story, I won't get into that, but we would hire giant teams of block walkers. There's professional companies out there. We paid a certain dollar, you know, X dollar per door knock, and then so they would go out and use the system we provided. And I would come to the office sometimes. We'd have 40 block walkers ready to go, boom, out to go tackle it, and then we would send them out to campaigns all over Texas, and that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars every time. And it's because we didn't just do one or two. We did this several campaigns at a time. So we were putting $200,000 easy in the field of block walkers and dividing that up. And we focused on, you know, things where we thought block walking could marginally make a difference. And so we weren't just like, boom, doing it. It was very, very calculated, but it cost a lot of money And then, of course, getting people to be part of something that is and give their time, once again, is hard. It's hard. You've got to really find those people, and it's, so that's want to make that point. But let's get over into strategy side of the equation. So you can. There's two strategies. I'm gonna give you two real quick strategies. I'm sure we could come up with a zillion strategies, but you have to have a strategy. You could send teams out. You can look at your whole universe and say, I want to talk to this type of voter. And then you spend all your time going out trying to talk to that type of voter, and reaching those doors and kind of, hey, we've reached 80% of them and we're gonna do 3 passes. And so that could be a game plan. And then you could always easily say, hey, I did this much. But like I said earlier, I ran a campaign where we didn't have a lot of resources. And so we had to create a ground game, but we had also 13 counties. And so, it was really hard to kind of get that whole thing going. So what we did is we created this swell of energy, and our block walking was assigned to the events calendar. And so we would get out ahead of the events and show up and make a spectacle of it. We couldn't knock on every door, but we could knock on enough doors to get this energy going, that people knew we were there. So there's other strategies. You just got to execute them differently, because if you're looking for the high energy strategy and you're sitting around pairs of 2s into 17 different areas, there's not a lot of wind behind it. But if you send pairs of 2s and 17, one area, she's a blow, and signs are popping out, and like, hey, did you see they're not? And so you get this energy. So it's just tactics. That's why you hire people, but we'll get into that later. And then let's talk about what you're doing out there when you're block walking. What are you doing? You're giving literature, and you're talking to a voter, and your goal is to convert that voter into a yes vote for you. So, and so you know what to do when the GOTV comes around. So a lot of times they'll just focus on lit drop. And so all you're doing is going to the door, you're not knocking on it, and you're just kind of putting a thing there and higher on it and moving on. And that's fine and dandy, but you do realize that you're not really making that true. If you're block walking, block walk, go for the contact, go for the data return, because you don't need to waste. You could hire UPS to drop lit, at 24 cent, whatever it is, and lit drop areas and zip codes. And so to send block walkers out and not really make an energy and a resource, unless you have a million of them out there just lit dropping, it's not a good resource, because you don't have that energy. You just see the one person all lonely walking around things on doors. It could be anybody. They could be selling light fixtures, but when you park a campaign vehicle and all of it jumps out and they start attacking the doors. That's great, good stuff. But once again, and then I pull back. That's the lit drop side of it. We also have the most important, I believe, is the survey side. If you're going to go to the door, and you're going to ask people to vote for you, and that's your goal. And so you've got to, and you're getting that person to open the door in the first place. You spend a lot of resources just to get that door open. Now that you have the opportunity to ask them the questions, here's the key. Make sure you ask them all your questions. Don't just walk away with a yes vote. Make sure you've got the yard signs, the volunteers, the donations, make sure everything's there. Make sure that person has had all the opportunities to say yes as many times as possible, because you're not sure if that door's gonna be opened again. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, you're gonna come back a second time and now, can I get a yard sign now? So you don't waste your valuable resources not asking all the questions. So critical to make sure you know what you're doing getting to those doors. So that's part of it too. Your yes votes, your yard signs, your volunteers, your donations. And here's why. I want to give you kind of a little bit on the numbers side of it. So we understand what you're squeezing like out of that limit. So what do you expect when you go block walking? And here I want to give you scenarios, but I want to make sure you understand there's different variables and each one's different. I'm in a high density area. I live in San Antonio. I've worked in areas, block walked in the country. You're not going to get the same out of that, because when your houses are a mile apart, maybe that's block walking for the best thing for you. But once again, that's different strategies. I think some of these things, if you think through them, you can make common sense stuff. But let me run some numbers for you. So just as this is a general number, if you have a volunteer block walk, and you could expect 15 to 20 doors an hour. That's 3 minutes, 4 minutes a door. And that's so what I want to take is number 20. And I say, so you've knocked on 20 doors, but what does that equate to? And that's going on the high end, by the way. What that equates to maybe 20 to 33% open rate. So let's go with the 33% open rate, which means you spend an hour, your volunteer has knocked on 20 doors, 7 of those doors have opened. Now, at that same rate, not all of those are your votes. You're an amazing candidate, so you're getting 4 of those votes, 2 for the other candidate, and 1's undecided. Wonderful. So you spend an hour, and you've got 4 yeses, and you've got data to know some other stuff too. But you spent 4 yeses, and you've got some other resources. But you got to ask yourself: is that the value? If I'm spending, money on a volunteer, I get 4 yeses in an hour. How many is it going to take me to win this race? You could do those calculations. So I want to run through that real quick. I got a kind of build out the stats. The stats. So kind of run through it. So this is. I'm thinking of, think with me of a general election here in Texas, House District. We're looking at maybe here in Bexar County, 150,000 voters, what I mean? And we know that we'll get about 45% turnout in the general election coming up. So we're kind of speaking into general election. We know that we'll get 45%. So that puts us about 67,000, 67,500 turnout. That's like 100% turnout. So we know that 50% plus 1 wins, which puts us about 33,751 vote. So those are easy numbers to come by. And then you got to, this is all helping with your calculations to get into the House and get into the block walk. You got to know what the effort's going to look like. So I'm running through a quick effort. What's the calculation? There's, whatever, it's about 0.8 factors per household. So in other words, voter per household. So you end up with a ratio of, I'm making this rough estimates, guys. I mean, there's different factors, but you're talking in a House district, you're in a general election, 27,000 households that are going to turn out to vote, and there's more than one person in a household yet, and more people, but I'm saying households. And then, so that being said, and once again, this is a far-fetched scenario. We could really get into different strategies. This is some different things, but so that's 20 doors an hour, we said earlier, and that's 27,000 doors. It's going to take a lot of work to knock on 27,000 doors at 20 doors an hour. I ran the numbers for you. You don't have to. It's 13,050 hours to knock on 27,000 doors. And that's roughly 170 8-hour shifts. And then imagine that you want to do it 2 times or 3 times because you really got to make that contact. And when you do that, imagine that you're not getting every door opened, and you're only getting a fraction of a fraction each time. And so, but what I will say is, that's super important. You've got to door knock. I know it sounds like I'm being pessimistic against door knocking. I'm trying to make or help understand what it means to door knock and what you could expect to get out of it. Here's what I want to tell you. It's a lot of work, but it's part of an effective strategy. And once again, you don't need to knock on 27,000. That's like, I'm saying there's 20,000 households that will come out to vote when multiple people in a household. And so really you're not going to talk to all those people because you're looking for the specific ones that are, really going to show up. So you don't have the money to talk to them all. You know what I mean? And so you've got to really figure out, of the 27,000, which ones are the best ones to talk to. Because I will tell you, we know about 85% of these households that are showing up. We know who they are because they show up every time. And then there's another group of them that, we could actually target, we can narrow that down to, it's called 80%. I don't even know what the number is. I'm not doing the math, you do it. And we could actually know they're showing up to vote. Those households are voting. And so those will be the ones that I knock on, the ones that are voting. And then there's a bunch of them that aren't voting, which you put into the air game category. And that's, a different, or maybe some digital strategies and stuff like that. But it's a lot of work. And the key is understanding how block walk fits into your plan, in your strategy. And so that's and it's hard to understand all these variables. It's like starting a business. If you haven't done it, what am I doing? You know what I mean? I also work on the business development side, and I have tons of clients that they love what they do, but they don't know what to do next. And so what next part is my equation. I say, this is what we do next. And then they go that way. Nice and easy. Too easy, but like, so the key is understanding what your strategy is. Bar's Business will help you with that strategy. Call me. You know, and then I want to get into the cost side of the factor. Like I said, it takes a lot of money to run for office. So you got to either have a bunch of money, which nobody does, or you have to know how to raise money, which is super duper hard. So you have to economize as best you can. So just understand that a block walk system, block walk plan is wonderful, but you also need the cost of the data, the cost of the systems you're going to use, the cost of the lists, the mailer cost. I mean, you're going to put a flyer in somebody's hand, you're going to have a piece of paper to write. So there's a lot of costs involved as well. And so it's not as easy as, all right, ready, set, go. And then like, what do you do? Where do you go? What household do you touch? Whose door are you knocking? Who are you giving this to? All that is really not complicated, once again, if you have a plan. And so I stop here. I've talked about a lot of stuff, but it is what it is. Block walking, it's an effective part of your campaign. It is the most effective. It's the best part in a lot of ways, because you get to go face to face with voters and have real conversations, and you get to get the door slammed in your face sometimes, and you get to get invited in sometimes, and then other times you could get to stay at their house. You know, I mean, we've done that. We've stayed in the craziest places. I'll tell you maybe one day a story of we stayed in Dublin, and I stayed. It was a home of Dr. Pepper, original Dr. Pepper, and on a campaign for Congress, and we stayed in one of those really antique houses. And I woke up one night, and it's in the room with the attics like this, and there's little dolls everywhere looking at me. I was freaky, but you know what? We did it in Jesus' name. We had a great time. But I leave you with that. Block walking is critical. Let Barnes Business help you understand what you're doing. We're reasonable. Come out, give me a call.